Tipping Point, Part 1, The Law of the Few. AIDS, New York crime, hush puppies, Paul Revere? How can all of these things be connected, one may ask? Simple. They all held a role at one time in epidemics. The Tipping Point goes into depth of how these epidemics came to be and how all of them eventually reached their tipping point. So sit back and relax as we dive into the world of social epidemics and what and who it takes to create them. This podcast is going to be broken into 3 parts. You are going to be listening to Part 1, The Law of the Few, the people that it takes to create social epidemics, word-of-mouth epidemics, stuff like that. The Law of the Few contains 3 different people. You have your connectors, your Mavins, and your salesmen. The connector. Everyone's heard the story of Paul Revere, but not very many people know who William Dawes is. William Dawes actually had the same midnight ride Paul Revere did, but for some reason Paul Revere is remembered and William Dawes is not as well. Some people do know who he is, but for the most part, most people know who Paul Revere is. And the theory is that Paul Revere was one of these connectors. Paul Revere knew everybody. He would talk to everybody. Everyone knew who he was. They weren't necessarily his friends. They were more acquaintances. And as you'll find out when you dive into the book, that acquaintances for the connector are very important. And then you got to ask yourself, do they really know everybody? And the simple fact is they do. They know so many people. It's not that they super get to know them, but they're not afraid to meet people and make a connection for a very short time that could make an impression that lasts for a very, very long time. As we get into this, I'll tell you about a guy I met named Andy Chavez, who I believe is my connector, but again, we'll talk about that. Is this intentional and can you learn it? I believe that it, like a lot of skills, it's inborn in you, but if you really practice it, you can learn to make acquaintance with people, to be friendly with people that you just kind of meet and have a quick acquaintanceship with, and you just kind of make a good impression on them. As we'll come to find out, they're all skills that you can learn. I'm sorry. Then you got to think, who is your connector? Like I said, I mentioned before, this Andy Chavez guy that I met through Collegiate DECA is a connector. He knows everybody. He's simply told me that at any point in my life, if I want a job with Marriott, talk to him because he has the connection. He knows everybody. Everybody knows who he is. All right, so that's the connector. Then we got to talk about the Mavin. What is a Mavin? Until I had read this book, I had no idea what a Mavin is. But a Mavin is a connoisseur, kind of a person who knows a lot about a certain product. They're not necessarily going to bestow all their knowledge on you, but they have this knowledge, and if you slightly pry them out of the goodness of their heart, they're gonna help you to understand what the best of whatever you're seeking is. So do you know a Mavin? In my personal life, I don't know. I've tried to think about it. Maybe that Andy guy, I don't know. There's a guy I do this podcast with named Blake, who I believe is a Mavin of sorts. He's a connoisseur of YouTube and using technology to advance his career. That's something that I am not good with, but he has the equipment. I'm actually using his equipment right now. So a question is, and connoisseurs are hard to find. There aren't a lot of them. But if you really look, you can find them in your life. They're not upfront about who they are, but if you get to know them and you can find them, they're very helpful. So ask yourself, do you know one? Think about it. Do you know someone who knows a lot about something that you're really interested in and that could help you on that way? All right, then the salesman. It says up there, not this guy, not the guy that slaps you on your back and is gregarious and he knows, he's ready to sell you this and he's trying to get to know you, but you can tell it's fake. you can tell he's not really your friend. He doesn't have your interest in heart. He has his bottom line at heart. And there's something to be said. You do want to go in, and when you sell, you do want to make money. Like, why else would you do it? But be the guy find the guy that really cares about about solving your problem, solving your need. That's the salesman type person that you're looking for. So not the guy that's slapping you on the back, laughing, having a good time, and is very self-serving. Look for the guy who's looking for the win-win. And those are the people that the tipping point talks about, the genuine people, the genuine salesmen. Create your own successful tipping point. Who are the few in your life? Who's your connector? Like I talked about earlier, Andy Chavez for me is a connector. He told me, I met him in New York City, and the way he remembered me is we were sitting in a room full of probably like 300 college students, and this guy gets up, and he's a short, kind of round guy, and he said, "Who in here is an entrepreneur?" And me, having owned a business, immediately raised my hand. And I was sitting, 6 feet from him. He was like, "Oh, good for you." He's like, "What'd you do?" I was like, "I owned a gym, a training facility, and I've done this on my own with no education, and now I've come back to school to learn how to really do what I'm doing." And he's like, "Oh, that's great." And then he talks for a little bit, and then he says, "Who in here wants to sell me something?" And again, like 300 college students, I'm sitting there, I raised my hand, and he said, "What do you want to sell me?" I said, who sets up the fitness facilities in your hotels? I've noticed, as I told you before, I came from a fitness facility background, and when I go to hotels, I'm always really disappointed in the fitness facility. He looked at me and said, "Talk to me after I'm done with this." And I said, "Absolutely." And you know what I did right after? I went up and talked to him. I got his card. And he told me, anytime he wants to maybe propose, or if I wanted to maybe propose a consult, I could do that, no problem, which I thought was great. And my business fell apart. It kind of crushed me a little bit. But after that, I picked myself up and I moved on. Well, come ICDC, this is the DECA competition in Anaheim, I met up with Andy again, and he remembered me. He didn't remember me completely, but he knew he recognized me, and he remembered me talking to him at this conference. And I told him my backstory about losing the business and things falling apart on me, and he says to me, well, what do you do? And I told him, there's only a couple things you can do. You can either lay there and die, or you get up, brush yourself off, and move forward. And he was like, you know what? He's like, if you want any job in the Marriott facility or franchise anywhere in the world, you see a job that you want, he said, I want you to send it to me with your resume, and I will get it into the hands of the hiring person I can guarantee you an interview, and I can guarantee you my good recommendation. He said, we're looking for people outside of the box, people who can think bigger. And that it blew my mind. And at that moment, I thought, you know what? There's my connector. That's the guy who can get me somewhere that I want to be. So now I'm starting to create my own success tipping point by having that connector in there. Okay. Now what I would like to do is find my Marvin. Find the person that's going to really, the connoisseur of gym flow and fitness facility flow inside a hotel. And maybe I'm that person. That's my next slide. Are you one of them? Or one of my next bullet points is, are you one of them? Maybe I'm my Marvin. Maybe I'm the connoisseur that can find the correct way to set up these facilities to make this stuff happen. And then the salesman. Again, maybe I'm the salesman too. Maybe I'm the one, because I'm passionate about it. I want to do this. Yes, I want to be very successful, but I'm not going to sell them something that they don't need. I want this to be something that benefits the Marriott company and myself and my family. It helps me push forward what I want to do. So that brings me to the second point. Are you one of them? Think about your skill set. Think about, do you have the ability to meet people? Do you have the ability to talk to people? Do you know something, a great deal about a subject? Whether it be where to get the best hotels in California, or where the best pizza place in New York is. What's the best bottle of wine for your dollar? How do you go about getting baseball tickets at a great price in Ranger Stadium? Whatever. So are you a Maven? Again, Mavens are hard to find. They're not very boisterous with their information. They take in what they like and they become experts on it for themselves. And again, if you try to pry a little bit of that information out of them, they will give it. They'll give it pretty willingly, but they're not super upfront with it. If it comes up in conversation, again, they'll talk about it, but they won't try to blow you away. They'll just kind of be like, hey, this is what I know, and take it or leave it, but this is what I think. And then the salesman. If you're self-serving, you're boisterous, people are going to be able to tell you're fake. If you passionately believe in this epidemic that's being created, and epidemic, I'm doing the air quotes here, epidemic, your own successful epidemic, if you can maybe actually sell yourself, maybe that's the way you need to look at the salesman, because you should be passionate about yourself. As I talked to Andy, I did sell myself. I told him, that I love to think outside the box. I love to create new ideas. And he told me that's exactly what they're looking for at Marriott. It's not just about a hotel and a bed anymore. It's about that experience when you come there. So one of the things he talked about was innovating new bathrooms so that people can shower and someone else can brush their teeth. Because on a business trip, you can expect two guys to share a room. That's not a big deal. But two guys to share a bathroom, that's not going to happen. Okay? So one guy has to wait completely for the other guy to get done. So what they came up with was to redesign the bathroom so that you could shower and then the sink would just sit outside. You come, brush your teeth, do whatever you need, good to go. And I would like to create that success tipping point for myself by selling my idea of kind of the same approach to the fitness facilities. Because if you walk into fitness facilities, they're junk. They got cruddy equipment, maybe a couple treadmills, a few dumbbells, but that's it. So my idea is to bring all this together by having that connector, and being my own Maven and finding my own Maven, and then for sure being my own salesman. I think putting those three together is a great starting point for creating my own success tipping point. So I believe that's going to be the end of our part 1 podcast. Stay tuned for parts 2, the stickiness factor, and part 3, the power of context, where we will dive deeper into what it would take to create your own success tipping point. Thanks for tuning in. This is The Beard signing out.
I'm in love with the cocoa.